Well, thank you everyone for inviting me to come and speak, and thank you most importantly for your support for our group of comrades who have been subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury in Chicago. I just came from Kalamazoo, and 8 people got together to hold a little protest outside the federal building, and that felt good to be out on the street with them. Even though it's small, you know, go Kalamazoo, you know. And I'm a Chicago kid, but I actually live in Michigan. So I'm adopted to Michigan now, and I'm one of you all. And I'm learning the rules of being a Michigander, but my wife and I are quick learners. So we're over in Grand Rapids, and that's where the FBI served us our subpoenas to appear. So you're all part of this too. So I'll tell you what happened. On Friday, the FBI went to our friend's house in Chicago, and they had 20 agents raid the house. 20. And they turned that house upside down. They also raided another a friend of ours, Palestinian activist, born and raised in Chicago like me. And his house, they took some boxes out of there, but he really didn't have much of what they were looking for there. And then in Minneapolis, 5 more houses and an office, the Anti-War Committee, Twin Cities Anti-War Committee. And one thing we all have in common is we all participate in writing for Fight Back newspaper, or we're the organizers, with a lot of other people, but kind of at the core of organizing the protest at the Republican National Convention in 2008. We all came from different places, but we all worked tightly together on that. So those are some of the commonalities. What did they take out of the houses? In Minneapolis, they took 2 cell phones away from people. So they've confiscated their cell phones. In Chicago, they took 28 boxes out of the one house. 20 agents working for 8 hours. They took children's clothing. They took toys. They took the children's artwork. But what they really took was computer hard drives. And they took 30 years of records from the movement, where people filed flyers and meetings, notes, and all kinds of magazines and newspapers. They took 2 vans full of boxes and carted it away. Altogether, there's now 13 people who have been served subpoenas. They served 2 more today in Minneapolis. 2 women that I think had traveled to Palestine, and the Israelis wouldn't let them in and forced them to go back home. And, some of the folks have been to Palestine. Others have been to Colombia, like myself. I went to Colombia in 2003. Some people have been to both. Some people have been to neither place. Some folks have not really gone on political trips even. So I'm just telling you because we're trying to look for what the commonalities are, But I think what kind of centers it is our international solidarity work and our anti-war work.
There it is.
And that's what ties us all together, because we're all deeply internationalist, and we do real work, just like you all here, to stop the wars, whether it's in Iraq and Afghanistan, or whether it's in Palestine and Colombia, wherever it is, And just to say, the FBI agents told us directly that their goal is to bring charges to tie us to terrorism. That's what they told us. They want to bring us up on charges of supporting terrorism. So you got to think about, what does that mean?
Yeah, right.
What it makes me think about is how I got involved in the movement. I got involved fighting apartheid at the college I went to. And if you recall, Nelson Mandela, who led armed struggle, they called him a terrorist till the day he was elected president, right?
Yep.
So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm also thinking about in the 80s then, my wife and I both worked in the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador to stop the U.S. war in El Salvador. Just like the FMLN, we went out and cheerleaded for the FMLN.
Absolutely.
We said El Salvador's going to win.
Yes.
And today, the president in El Salvador is from the FMLN. No longer considered terrorist, right? So what we're doing today is we're supporting the groups and the people's movements in Palestine and in Colombia. The FBI subpoena talks about the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. It also talks about the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. And what they're trying to claim is that we're sending money there. And I guarantee you, we have not sent a penny. Mick Kelly, the Fight Back newspaper editor, he can't pay his rent. He's not sending his money to anybody.
And that's what the problem is for all the working
That's
class,
the truth.
you know?
That's right.
Trying to survive.
We have trouble getting the money together to publish our newspaper every 2 months.
Right.
And so we printed 15,000 of the last copy. That's about the most we've ever done. That's about the most money we've spent on it. Our money goes back into building a movement here and building movements of movements. We're involved in the immigrant rights movements. The people who called that movement in Chicago, one of them worked with me for 8 years as a school custodian, you know. We're very tied with that movement. The anti-war movement, obviously, but the poor people's movements, like you all work on here in Detroit, you know, we're very active in the labor movement as well. You know, we're not a big group of people. That's why we're working with other folks in other cities like yourselves, and that's why we have met with the Workers' World Party recently to try and unify our work and our ideas stemming from our work. But where we are, we're very good at what we do,
Yes.
and we're very effective. And we think that's why they're coming after us.
That's right.
That's right.
And they're not just coming after us, they're coming after our movement against war
Right.
and international solidarity.
Right.
You know, we should be able to travel to other countries to talk to other people just like us and to see the humanity they express in opposition to U.S. wars and occupation. The United States gives its most military aid to Israel. Number 2 is Colombia.
Right.
Why is this? Why is it at this time in our lives and in the history of the world that Israel's number 1 and Colombia's number 2? Because they're key to U.S. domination
Yes. In the
of
regions.
those regions.
That's right.
The United States is turning Colombia into what Israel is in the Middle East.
Right.
They're making it the hostile neighbor to everybody else. And they're using it as a base to military dominate the rest of the countries in the region. So 2, we happen to focus a large part of our efforts on Palestine and supporting the Palestinians. And we've done so for 25 years. And 2, on Colombia, where the resistance movement is very strong, despite anything you'll read in a newspaper in this
Right.
country, unless it's a left newspaper. And then, where does that lead us to? Well, we go and we interview the people in those movements. Or we get their families to go into the prisons, and they come out with the answers to the interviews, and we publish them. And we have that right. If the New York Times has the right to interview Hamas,
Yeah.
you can't tell me we don't have the right to interview the PFLP. Right?
That's right. That's right.
And so this is an attack upon our right to freedom of speech and lots of other journalists and activists' rights to freedom of speech.